In this video, I have an in-depth cold calling conversation with top Gong account executive JC Pollard, who's also built a pretty big following on LinkedIn, and we walk through his step-by-step B2B SaaS cold calling framework that he used to generate 80% of his pipeline and get promoted to account executive in record time. If you're an SDR who wants to become the top cold caller at your B2B SaaS company, just like JC, this video gives you a complete guide on everything cold calling, from mindset, timing, preparation, to how to execute, from opening the cold call, running discovery, pitching, setting the meeting, and you're gonna wanna stay to the very end when JC talks about objection handling and the key turning point that led him to increase his cold call conversion rate to a crazy, unheard of 48%. Whether you're a current SDR or account executive, cold calling is the #1 prospecting skill you can be developing that will get you paid. And if you're not proactively sharpening this skill set, then you're leaving thousands of dollars on the table. So my challenge, my call to action to you is to watch this video multiple times, soak it in, take notes, create your own tailored cold call frameworks and scripts adapted to the context of the company you sell at, or if you're an aspiring SDR, to the company that you want to sell for, and then practice via role plays with peers or people that can keep you accountable, and finally get on the court and make more cold calls to build more pipeline and put more cash in your pocket. What's up, guys? My name's Chris Bussing, and I've been building this YouTube channel for the past 3 years, and its mission is to help more people create lives of freedom and impact through success in tech sales and the pursuit of self-development. If you enjoy this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more videos like these designed to help you launch your tech sales career. If you're a current or aspiring SDR that wants to take your career trajectory to the next level in tech sales, make sure to subscribe to my Sell More, Live More newsletter, linked in the description of this video, and you'll get free resources like cold calling scripts and interview checklists, and even a mini negotiation course. And also feel welcome to check out my collection of 8 courses, Tech Sales Accelerator, designed to give you the full blueprint to landing a great tech sales role at a top company and getting promoted from SDR to account executive to join the 6-figure earners club. All right, let's dig into JC's proven cold calling frameworks so you know exactly what it takes to become a top cold caller at a company like Gong.
I'm not gonna lie, dude, I was a really fucking good SDR. Like, I got that shit on lock. It was so fun. I loved it. I hated it also because it's a brutal role, but dude, I loved by my last like 6 months as an SDR, I was working like 4-hour days because I just had it on lock. It was just repeatable.
Dude, okay, I'm excited to dig into this, man. I'm an AE, but like I want to know the secret sauce.
Yeah, I think too, as AI gets better and as companies start to crack down on the amount of emails people can send, I think cold calling is about to get more and more and more important. And I think it's going to be the true differentiator for successful SDRs.
Yeah.
Get really good at it. Like, figure out how to get really good at it. If your company's not providing proper training, find proper training. There's so many good resources out there. Figure out how to absolutely be wicked on the phones. And I'm happy to talk about cold calls with you for like 2 hours. I love cold
let's
calls.
dig into it.
You have to really want to be good at it, and then you have to pour hours in, especially early. Like, I remember when I first got hired at Gong as an SDR, every time I would work out, every time I'd go for a walk, I didn't listen to music for like 6 months because I was just listening to SDR cold calls.
Dude, respect, man.
That's all I listened to.
Wow.
And there were a few like Sam Kozabrodsky, who still works at Gong, excited to get back and see him soon. I picked a few SDRs that I wanted to emulate that had a similar tone to me, and I listened to every call they made. This is also like a shameless plug for Gong, but I had this filter set up where every single time a cold call was successfully booked, like a meeting was booked off a cold call, I had to go to this playlist I had in Gong.
Wow.
I listened to every single, not my whole SDR tenure, like when I was early, every single meeting booked, I listened to that cold call, and I wanted to learn from that cold call and emulate that cold call. So just have this like insatiable hunger to learn from
You're
the
like
best.
A professional athlete that's watching the game tape.
Yeah, just way less
like,
cool.
Yeah. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, and paid way less too. But yeah, that's the first thing is like just decide that you're going to get really good at it and put as much effort and energy into it as you want to do.
Commitment.
commitment. For me, I booked like 80+% of my pipeline via cold calls. So I knew if I'm going to book a meeting, it's probably going to come from a cold call. So my intent of a cold email is I want it to stand out enough where when I cold call them, my name's in their head, or there's some level of familiarity, or there's something I can reference on the cold call. So my intent was never, I want to book a meeting off this email. It's like, I want to write something that stands out enough where when I catch them on the phone, I've already got a leg up on the conversation. I hope you think when you're cold calling someone that whatever you're offering is valuable enough where like, I never had the feeling where I was asking someone a favor by trying to book a meeting. I believed I was doing them a favor by exposing them to Gong earlier than they would have been exposed to Gong if I had not called them.
Mm.
And that creates a very different tonality on a cold call. I'm not like begging for your time. I'm not like selfishly trying to steal some of your calendar. I'm like, dude, I'm helping you out right now because you're going to want this shit. And even if you don't fully believe that, try to manufacture that feeling as much as you can and try to have that tone on a call where you're not some like SDR who's just trying to get a meeting on the books. Like, hey, could we please meet for like an hour with my sales director, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, it's like, dude, I have something that's going to blow your fucking mind. You want to see this. It's going to help. Let's figure out a time to meet. Like, that's a completely different perspective to have on a call.
JC, you talked about not making compromises in life. And one compromise that I encourage the audience to not make is being at a company where you don't believe in the product. So if they find that, okay, I'm at a spot where I actually don't believe in this, I can't even manufacture belief, maybe it's a sign to make a pivot to whatever your Gong might look like, you know?
Yeah, well, maybe it's Gong for you and hit me up. I get a referral bonus.
Come on, guys. Let's get JC paid.
I do have a data point. I booked like 35% of my pipeline as an SDR via Friday cold calls.
Okay.
Which is crazy if you think about.
Yeah.
Like Friday's only 20% of your work week. It's a day where a lot of people aren't working, and 35% of my pipeline is generated on that day.
Timing matters.
I don't know if there's any actual fact behind anything I'm about to say, but these are like my hunches as to why Friday cold calls work. First, I think people tend to have lighter meeting days on Friday. I feel like companies typically try not to schedule a ton of internal stuff. A lot of times sellers don't like to book meetings on Fridays. Like people just typically have a little bit more time in their day where they could pick up the phone. The second thing, I feel like people tend to be in better moods on Friday. You're almost there. It's almost the weekend, almost time to shut the laptop and go really enjoy life for a couple of days. And so I think that allowed me to have some like friendlier, more energetic conversations with people on Fridays. And then the third thing is, and this is kind of contradictory, I think people want to get off the phone because it's a Friday.
Yeah.
But they're less like, I got to get off the phone because I got to get back to this meeting right now. It's more like, let's wrap this up and like, let's table this for next week.
Yes.
I feel like people are kind of predisposed to like, I'm trying to wrap up my week, but let's push this to next week. And I think that provides you an opportunity to book a meeting for the next week.
Yes.
There's other reasons I like Friday cold calls. I think there's like some fun opening lines you can use on Fridays and that kind of stuff. But I have a hunch that that's why I had so much success doing it.
Okay, what's a fun opening line?
Like, and we'll talk about this in depth with cold calls. I think authenticity is so important in cold calls. Like use your voice, use your tone. I like to joke around. I like to have fun. I like to lean into humor.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, hey man, like I know you woke up today being like, it's Friday, the weekend's almost here. I cannot wait to get a cold call today. But like, can I briefly tell you why I'm ruining your weekend?
Oh my
like,
gosh, I like
but
that.
that might not work for some people. Like
you have to be able to own it.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah, and like there's other lines like that. But and the other thing I think Tom Malemo always says champions distance themselves on Fridays. A lot of people hang it up early on Fridays. Sometimes I do too. Sometimes I just won't work on a Friday. Like part of life is knowing when to push the gas pedal, when to let off. But I think it's an opportunity to differentiate yourself from the team that might be wrapping it up at 1 p.m. and you're cold calling till 5. Like if you want to stand out, especially early in your career, there's value to that. So I have this fundamental belief that the vast majority of cold calls are won and lost in the first 30 seconds. Once again, I have zero data behind it. This is just like personal experience.
Yeah.
But so many hangups happen in the first 30 seconds. So often the first 30 seconds put people in a defensive state, like from the prospect side, or like, oh, I don't want to be sold to, all these things. I think having a really strong opener sets you up for so many more opportunities to actually pitch. Like if you think about booking a meeting, at some point you're going to have to get to the point where you can pitch. most people don't even give themselves that opportunity because they blow it in the opening.
Yeah.
That is like, also, we talked about this earlier, got to control the things you can control. I cannot control how someone's going to respond. I can control how I open a cold call, and I can control the authenticity and the confidence and the conviction in which I do it. So I have a few different things I think are really important to incorporate in openers. This is all with the full acknowledgement that there's no perfect recipe for cold calls. If it doesn't sound authentic to you, it's not going to land.
Yes.
And there are other people who have super contradictory approaches to me that have a ton of success on the phones. You got to find what works for you.
Because it's authentic to them, maybe.
Totally.
You
So
know?
there's no one size fits all, and I never, ever, ever want to come off like I'm like the cold call guru or expert. I still get hung up on all the time. Like this is not, this is a mix of art and science, but there's no
But you
silver
make
bullet.
the calls.
Yeah. That's probably actually the most important thing you talk about.
Yeah,
you gotta
and
pick up the
you
phone.
do it on a Friday.
Yeah.
No, that is, by the way, a quick note is like, showing up consistently
Totally.
and being gritty. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Man.
Quick sidebar on that. Because I
Yeah.
used to get asked a lot by SDRs, like, what are you doing differently? Like, how are you doing so much better than me? And I got to the point where I would share my screen and I'd pull up a graphic of calls made and calls listened to. I'm like, I made 4 times more calls than you this week, and I listened to twice as many calls. Why are you asking me for a secret recipe? Like,
Dude.
call more. So yeah, step 1, make a lot of calls.
What a nugget right there.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, let's get to the
Back to the opener. I like a permission-based opener, and I like to actually do it at a different point in the call that a lot of people talk about. So for those of you who don't know, permission-based opener is like asking permission to do something on the call. You're asking the prospect to grant you permission to do the next thing. A lot of people use this when they're about to pitch. Like, hey, can I have 45 seconds to explain what Gong is? Or can you just give me a minute to tell you about what we do? That's actually not where I like to use it. I like to use it earlier in the call because I want the prospect to feel like they're in control of the conversation and like I'm not hijacking their time. So I want to give them the opportunity to give me permission earlier in the call. So for me, it's, hey, this is JC calling with Gong. Could I like super briefly explain why I'm calling you? I want to get it right off the bat. Like, can I have permission to just tell you why I'm calling you?
You got right to it.
Right to it.
And I'm in control now. I'm like, okay, sure. Like maybe I'm busy and like, but you know what? You're being a human being. You're not just jumping into a pitch.
Yeah, or like, hey, I know it's super annoying to get a cold call. Could I like have 10 seconds to specifically explain why I'm calling you?
I like that specifically too.
Yeah.
It alludes to the fact that I am not reaching out by accident. I'm in business. So
And I think we talked about this earlier. Like, I'm very analytical. Like, how is someone going to feel? And I like to zoom out a lot. And I think about like, I get cold calls from like Sirius XM, where I'm like clearly on a list of 10,000 people where I'm getting read the same exact pitch. And like, it's so off-putting. And I'm like, just please hang up. Please take me off your call list. So my thought is like, how can I, as early as possible in the call, prove that I'm not that?
Yeah.
I'm not calling about your extended car warranty. Like, I know who you are and I'm calling you for a reason. So I want to early on be like, can I quickly explain why I'm specifically calling you?
Yes.
Hopefully they say yes. Oftentimes they'll say no. We can talk about how to handle that later. But the next part is something I call a 3YU. And once again, I'm making this stat up because I'm not a data guy, but I would throw a dart at the dartboard and guess that like 90% of SDRs and AEs don't do this next part. And if I were to pick apart what allowed me to be successful with cold calls and like boil it down to one thing, like what made the biggest difference, what was the most needle moving thing you incorporated in your calls, it would be this. And it's having 3 distinct reasons why you are calling that person.
3 reasons.
3 distinct reasons. And they don't, sometimes you can't find like stuff to research on LinkedIn, so you can come up with stuff, you can get crafty with it. But I want that person to know that I'm intentionally calling them for a reason.
Yeah.
And the way I think about it too is like, if I'm on the receiving end of a cold call and someone has demonstrated that they've at least taken the time to know who I am to some degree, there's kind of like this reciprocal effect where like I feel like I now owe you a minute to explain why you're calling.
Yes.
Right? It's like an unspoken agreement. Like, all right, man, like you did your research. I'll hear what you have to say.
And by the way, I've noticed that when I'm specific and intentional in my outreach, I get if a CEO is like, hey, hate cold calls or whatever, or it even could be in a cold email where they're like, take me off your list. And I can with confidence share that I know I'm reaching out to you very intentionally, and I can I'm able to push forward from a place of authentic confidence,
Totally.
if that makes sense.
100%.
Yeah.
So like as an example, let's say I'm calling a sales leader. Like we'll keep pulling the thread on the Gong example because it's the easiest to do. Like, hey, the reason I'm reaching, so you would get your permission-based opener, right?
Yeah, go ahead. You got 15 seconds.
Or like, can I quickly explain why you're reaching out? Sure. It's like, awesome. I noticed your CEO recently published an article saying you're focused on the enterprise segment. I also saw you're actively hiring for 3 account executives. And third, and this is where I like to layer in my personalized email as part of my 3-way U. Third, I shot you a really weird email about giraffes and how that ties back into tech sales. Based on all that, I'm really curious, like, are you familiar with Gong and what we do? So I have a different approach. I don't ask to pitch. I give 3 reasons why it's like, hey, let me make it clear why I'm calling you. I've done my research. Based on my research, I'm curious, like, do you know what we do? Are you familiar with what we do? It's kind of different. A lot of people don't like go that route. That's where I like to take it.
It makes it so warm though, and I'm all for that.
Yeah.
You know?
And like, I think about a cold call as like this dance back and forth where I know where I want to go in that call, but I still want there to be like opportunities layered throughout the call where there's interaction as opposed to me just talking for 5 minutes. So that's why I'm like, hey, curious, are you familiar with what we do? I know I'm going to ask to pitch next, right? But I want to give them an opportunity to like respond. I want there to be dialogue and interaction back and forth.
So it's really about an opportunity to respond regardless of whether they know you or not? Or does does your pitch that comes change based on if they're familiar or not?
They totally can, right?
Okay.
If they're like super familiar, that's going to be an entirely different follow-up than moral of the story.
Yeah.
I think feature dumping and pitching is really annoying.
Yeah.
So I want to have like a quick dialogue with them and then understand how I need to respond from that. So that's my structure. It's like, and I also want to emphasize, I am a big believer that the how is more important than the what in an opener. So it's less about the exact verbiage you use. It's more about how you deliver it. I think the theme here is like, I'm always thinking like, what's this other person thinking?
Yeah.
And if I'm getting cold called, I don't want to be on the phone. So you better sound like you want to be on the phone as the cold caller.
Yeah.
Like, how can you expect that person to be excited to talk to you if you sound like you are going through a list of 100 dials and it's monotonous and you don't want to be there? Yeah. Deliver it with conviction, have swagger. So, hey, can I quickly explain why I'm reaching out to you? Sure. Boom. Here are 3 reasons why. Curious. Are you familiar with what we do? Yes, no. And then you have an opportunity to ask to pitch.
And now I'm curious, what does your pitch look like at a high level for Gong?
So that is another thing. God, I could talk about cold calls for like 10 hours.
I know. Dude, this is so fun. And everyone loves cold calling, I notice.
Yeah.
Everyone loves it.
So that is another mistake I think a lot of people make. If you have a cookie cutter, if you have one pitch, unless you're only calling one hyper-specific persona, then you're fumbling. How is one pitch supposed to land with a VP of sales versus a RevOps leader versus a CRO versus a frontline man? Like, there's no one thing that all those people care about equally. My pitch is hyper tailored to that persona based on the pain points and the challenges I know about them. If it's a sales leader, it is going to sound, there might not be a single piece of overlap in my Gong pitch for a sales leader versus a RevOps leader. It might not even sound like the same company when I'm talking about it because their pain points and their struggles and their focuses are so different. So my pitch is very concise, it's very to the point, and it's very specific to that persona. Think about like a cold call funnel. Like, what is the average connect rate right now? I think it's like 3 to 5%. So you make 100 calls, you get 3 to 5 pickups. Of those, maybe you get 2 to 3 opportunities to pitch. Like, you've already you got a small amount of opportunities to book a meeting. If you finally get that opportunity and you're going to then deliver a cookie cutter pitch, like, are you kidding me? You went through all of that funnel. You finally got the opportunity to pitch. And now you're going to blow it because you have like one templated 2-paragraph long monologue that goes on for 4 minutes that nobody cares about. Like, no, you better be really sharp with your pitch because you don't get that opportunity that often.
So you get the opportunity with the CRO, and the pitch for the CRO is going to be different than other key personas that you might sell to.
Entirely
right?
different.
And so are you saying like, hey, we work with other CROs like yourself and we notice we're running into these specific challenges. This is where we come in and help, blah, blah, blah. We helped a similar CRO to you. a different company achieve this result. I'm putting some, projecting, but how do you pitch, let's say, to a CRO?
So ideal state, I've learned something about that person that gives me an inkling into what they're caring about. If not, I have to operate on a hunch. For a CRO, though, let's say, you got to think about, what does a CRO care about? Like, it's probably like big strategic goals.
Yeah.
Right? They don't care about like ramp time of my reps. They care about like, are we taking our messaging to market the right way?
Yeah.
What does our win rate look like? That kind of thing. Hopefully I've learned something about their company or them through my research that I can like zone in on. But if it's a CRO, it's like, hey, like I talk to CROs all day and they're typically hyper focused on uplifting close rates, especially in this economy, ensuring that their reps are taking their messaging to the market the right way. And then maybe it's like a third thing. I'm curious, like of those three things, are any like hyper pertinent to what you're focused on right now? If you notice, I still haven't pitched. Still haven't talked about Gong, but hopefully they give me an answer. And maybe it's like none of the above, whatever. But if they say one of those things, it's like, let's say they say with the win rate thing. Awesome. Like, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Gong and what we do. I'm like 4 back and forth questions deep before I start pitching, like actually talking about my product. Because I don't think anyone likes products. I think people like solutions. How am I supposed to know a solution if I don't know your problem? I also want to recognize, like, it's hard to get to this point in a cold call.
Yeah, good point.
Like, you'll get hung up on. You're not going to get there every time. This recipe doesn't lead to the opportunity to pitch every time, but like, I think it fosters the most fruitful conversations.
It's a really good approach, man. And you're allowing the prospect to feel heard.
Totally.
And that is a gateway to connection. You're understanding them, and then you're understanding how you can very specifically tailor your pitch to what resonates and not talk about fluff that doesn't resonate at all.
Totally. And so maybe they're like, yeah, the win rate's like, oh, we're really focused on win rates or whatever. It's like, awesome, dude. Like, honestly, most sales leaders have such a hard time with this because you cannot be on every call. You've got a ton of reps spread across the country. It's almost impossible to understand like what the trends are between the deals you win and the deals you lose are. With Gong, you'll be able to use AI and data to surface the commonalities between the deals that convert to close won versus close loss. So you can scale that across the business and uplift your close rates at scale. Curious, does that feel like it'd be of value? Or how are you going about doing that today? Like the question's always
yes.
But like I've learned something about them. I've shown them why I'm calling them specifically. I've learned if they're familiar with what we do or if they're not. I've learned a little bit about what they care about, and now I can deliver something that's really personalized, and it's punchy, and it's short, and it's focused on that one thing. I think I've posted about this before. I think objection handling, I think that term puts us in a position to fail because I don't think the goal of an objection should be to handle it.
Dude, it's funny. I had another, tech sales thought leader like yourself come on and said the same thing. So,
what do they say?
No, exactly what you're saying though is like customers don't want to be handled, or they don't want to be overcome. I've actually heard. So I got to be careful with my own phraseology. Yeah. So anyways, continue on with the thought.
So and this goes back to, you asked like, what can you do during an interview to kind of stand out? And I said like, ask a question in response to a question. That's the same thing with an objection. Like my first goal when I get hit with an objection is not to handle it, but to understand it. Like, how could you even handle an objection if you don't understand it? Most of the time, the objection you get hit with is not the real thing. It's like an excuse to get you off the phone, or it's like a default reaction that they have. And you might all of a sudden start launching into this defensive monologue trying to handle an objection that isn't actually real.
Yeah.
So step 1, always ask a question in response to an objection.
I'm not interested. I mean, that's so high level. I don't know if you want to go ahead. Go on your thought.
Yeah, path. I'm not interested. Instead of like, well, we're helping a ton of other CRO. Like, that's what most people's default reaction.
Jump into panic mode. Like, oh shoot! All of a sudden, the time's ticking. Like, they might kick me off. Like,
on average, our customers are making through. Go, are you still not interested? Like, no. It's like, I'm not interested. Like, hey, no worries. I'm a little surprised. Typically, CROs are like super interested in this. I'm curious. Like, are you not interested because you're super aware of what we do and it genuinely has no overlap? Or are you not interested because you're just like not really focused on anything in this realm right now? Because I want to know, like, are you actually not interested? Are you just trying to get me off the phone? Do you even know what you're not interested in? Like, or another one, like, hey, typically when I hear that, I mean, someone's like hyper familiar with what we do and it's genuinely not of interest. Like, is that the case here? And they might be like, well, no, I don't really know what you do. I'm just like not looking to buy anything right now. That's an entirely different conversation than like, I know exactly what you do. I'm just not interested right now. You don't want to go down one rabbit hole if you don't know it's the right hole. you got to seek to understand. You got to ask good questions.
Seek to understand, ask questions, get to the source of the actual objection. And I notice you're using something that Chris Voss calls an accusation audit.
Yeah.
At least I think you are, right? To label what the objection might be, and then they can validate and give you feedback on it. And so that's such a good framework to, what should we call it? Objection understanding?
Yeah,
What's a better
that's what
term?
I try to call it. Yeah.
Okay, objection understanding.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get the trademark
There you go.
for that one. Final thing on cold calling is closing to set the meeting.
Yes, dude.
Let's set the meeting.
Dude, I realize I've come up with a bunch of random terms like 3YU. So
Dude,
I have
this
an
is cool.
approach to closing cold calls that I call the 1 + 1 = 2 method.
I love your these are awesome. You got to trademark them, man. But
Dude, I'm actually like genuinely a nerd about this stuff. I think about it outside of work too often. It is rare that you get to the point in a cold call where you have a chance to close, right? Like so much has had to go right at that point. And I feel like what happens to a lot of SDRs is we have a healthy conversation with a prospect, and as soon as it comes time to ask for the meeting, it's like we completely forget all the value we just delivered, and now we're asking a favor of the prospect. Like the amount of cold calls I hear where it's like, hey, like, could you and my AE meet for like, I'll buy you lunch, like what? It's a very like soft and passive and kind of selfish ask, and I made this mistake a lot early as an SDR. I want to have this epiphany in a cold call that I call the 1 + 1 = 2 method. The first one is I've discovered a problem that this person is dealing with. The second one is there's something I know my product or service can do to help that. And the two is this epiphany of like, oh my gosh, maybe we should talk about this more. So it might sound like, and this is how I would typically structure it, is like, hey, like, can I be honest here? Sure, go ahead. Notice how I'm doing permission. I get permission all throughout the cold call.
you're keeping them in control.
Totally.
Yeah.
They're like, sure. Like, you just told me like you're having a really hard time understanding why you're losing deals. Gong actually can help you do that by X, Y, and Z. Like, based on that, I think it actually makes a ton of sense for us to set aside like 45 minutes and actually show you what that might look like. Like, does that sound totally crazy to you? But I want the prospect to feel like I came to that call without a preconceived notion that I'm going to ask for a meeting. And instead it's like, oh my God, like I learned this thing and I know we do this thing. Like 1 + 1 = 2, like maybe we should meet about this. But I want it to feel like I didn't come into that call already 100% decided that I'm going to try to book a meeting with you. It's like, whoa, dude, like you just told me this. And I know this. Like, let's do this.
Wow.
And I think it's really powerful. And this is super applicable to AE roles too, like getting the next steps and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you came in detached from the outcome, but literally seeking to understand, and the customer, the prospect, the future customer understands that.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, they're like, oh, he actually went through this discovery process and wasn't coming in like thinking I'm going to set a meeting no matter what. You didn't have like a transactional
And obviously
forcing
you
mindset.
go into it hoping to set
I mean,
a
you do
meeting.
want, yeah.
Like obviously deep down, you're like, you want to set the meeting. You probably
No one went
know-
into a cold call not wanting to set the meeting.
right. But I think it just comes off so much better when it's just this like 1 + 1 = 2 method. Another example, like I'm a RevOps leader and like my reps are terrible entering data into Salesforce. I know that Gong can auto-populate that data into Salesforce for you. It's like, hey, like you kind of just told me how like you got this very, very real challenge around like data hygiene. I'm a rep. I'm terrible at it. I'm not surprised to hear this. Like Gong actually takes that off your plate by automating that process for you and your reps. I think it would actually be really impactful if you saw what that looked like. Would love to set up some time to do that. Like, is that an unfair ask? Like, it's this very genuine, like, you just told me this. I know this. And I think if I'm to distill this down, like, why would that person want to meet? Why would they want to take an hour out of their day to learn more? It's not for you to get a validated meeting. It's not for the free $20 Grubhub gift card that you're going to offer. Like, what is in it for them, and close with that at the forefront. Like, I think you could benefit a lot from this. It's natural for us to set up a next step around that.
I'm sold. I want some Gong, man.
Yeah,
Maybe for next Christmas.
That's when I became a really good SDR, was when I started preparing for the AE interview and the AE process. I started listening to discovery calls, I started doing mock discovery calls with account executives. So my best advice for SDRs, and start now. Like if you're 3 months into your role, start preparing for your AE role. Put time on AEs calendars, pick their brains, listen to their calls. You will learn so much that you could actually incorporate. Like there was this crazy, and I posted about this. I had a 48% conversion rate on cold calls my last few months as an SDR at Gong. Like essentially, it was nuts. It was crazy. But there was like a very distinct clicking point that got me there. And it was when I started preparing for an AE interview. Because I started learning how to do real discovery, not just like SDR basic level discovery. I started going to cold calls with a different intention. I'm like, I want to practice for the AE role on this cold call. And what was crazy is like my results got better from that. So I think my best advice for SDRs that want to be an AE, start preparing right now. Start doing mock discovery calls. Start listening to discovery calls. Start pretending you're an AE right now. It will help you as an SDR, and it'll also make you feel really ready for the AE role.
All right, guys, as I said, the call to action, the challenge is to watch this video a few more times, take notes, create your own cold calling scripts, practice, role play, and then make more calls to put this stuff into action, build more pipeline, and put more cash in your pocket. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more videos like this designed to help you start and grow your tech sales career. And for the aspiring SDRs and current SDRs who want to take their job hunt and their current career trajectory to the next level, make sure to subscribe to my newsletter, linked in the description of this video, for free cold calling resources, an interview checklist, and a negotiation mini course. And make sure to check out my collection of courses, Tech Sales Accelerator. It's 8 courses that gives you a full step-by-step blueprint to landing a great tech sales role at a top company and getting promoted to account executive to join the 6-figure earners club. Now, I have had people go into Tech Sales Accelerator and get account executive roles. And I do have current SDRs at companies like Oracle and other late-stage startups that are leveraging the SDR Success Blueprint, which is a part of Tech Sales Accelerator, to master the SDR role and get promoted to account executive. If you guys have any questions about Tech Sales Accelerator and coaching that I offer, feel welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn and shoot me a message there, or email me at chrisbussingchannel@gmail.com. Thank you for being here. Thank you for investing in your own personal and professional development. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you have thoughts on this video, on cold calling, you have questions or topics that you want me to make videos on. And guys, to your success in tech sales and in life, happy selling and happy living. And we'll see you in the next one.